Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Highly Inspired. I'm Ella.
I'm Jordan.
Hey, guys, we had some technical difficulties here.
That was a very hostile intro. I feel like we're normally like, hi.
Well, they're going to have to deal with hostile for today.
We are hostile because we just made one of the biggest fattest L's that we've had since we figured out the tech for this podcast. And we recorded for 30 minutes semi-intoxicatedly and it didn't go anywhere. And we didn't have our like mics actually on.
Yeah, and I'm so excited I'm excited for a lot of things. Clubhouse has made me really excited for the future. I've been going on it since I joined, honestly, like 3 weeks ago. I've been in and out. Like you said, we've been stalking Tim in and out of the houses that he's had. He's had some crazy ones. Like
I love how he just says like he built a room under such a random topic.
Should women own Bitcoin?
Should women own Bitcoin? And obviously that's a joke, it's sarcasm, but it's fun. And I want Clubhouse to obviously be efficient for building connections and having that professional aspect, you know, but I also want Clubhouse to stick with that, way.
Yeah. Yeah, so we want Clubhouse to stick in that way as well.
No way.
We're going to take this moment to open some questions up to the audience. If anyone wants to join in, please raise your hand. We just had a technical difficulty.
Technical issue.
Please raise your hand if you want to talk about Clubhouse questions or the death of LA. Basically, Jordan Okay, so they're on now. We're ready to go. So what we want to talk about first was Clubhouse. We are currently live on Clubhouse. As you guys know from our last episode, we're going to be doing this from now on.
Yep.
We want to get to know you guys better. We want to interact with you. We want you to be able to have early access to the episodes if you want that. So yeah, feel free to add us on Clubhouse, and we love Clubhouse.
Let's talk about Clubhouse actually, because I absolutely love it. And I think that when we have talked about like the future of communication and where it's going to lead and even become more interactive and visceral, I think that Clubhouse is sort of like the perfect segue right now, because you know how when Zoom first came out and we had to use it because of the pandemic, it was kind of the only option to have both visual and audio to be able to like be as in person as you possibly can. I think that Clubhouse allows for that in a much less data heavy way, where you don't obviously have the visual component, but going forward, I think that social media will become more so this experience with having just more of an authentic verbal communication methodology than just typing words out on a post, because that's what like other platforms are right now. Twitter is only that and like random edited videos and photos. Instagram is only that and photos. Facebook is only that and photos and videos. So there's no other medium where it's solely just communicating verbally, aside from like listening to podcasts that aren't live. It's not the live aspect.
Have you noticed that Clubhouse doesn't attract lazy people?
Yeah.
If you think about this.
Every person that I've seen so far seems very driven and very down to earth.
I feel like people who are into Clubhouse, well, if you think about it, like other social medias, like I'm not saying that it's lazy. I mean, there's clearly people that their entire career is being an Instagram influencer, and that takes a lot of work.
Oh my gosh, I can't even. No, they're the heroes. I can't even relate to that.
Did I tell you?
Strenuous lifestyle.
Have I told you about the Airbnb?
The editing. Oh my god.
Did I tell you about the influencer Airbnb experience that I saw in Malibu?
No.
Okay, you know how like
no, you didn't.
You remember like I don't know if it's like 2 years ago, one of our first podcasts was like we touched on Airbnb like experiences in LA.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, on Airbnb, it's not just that you can go and like rent a house or whatever, but in certain cities, there's actually experiences that you can book. And in LA, there are experiences such as these, like you can go on famous tours and like someone will take you to go take a photo at the pink wall, et cetera, et cetera. And I was in
the pink wall.
Yeah. People,
that's the most token symbolic cliche place you could possibly go.
Yeah,
for
Tim Dillon did
Instagram
actually a
posts.
really funny sketch there if you want to check it out.
Economy of Los Angeles, California. There's a security guard here patrolling this pink wall. You know where they don't have a security guard? My mother's nursing home. You can go in there, rob them, they don't care. But we treat our influencers with respect. The women behind me all have doctorates in political economy from Harvard. Thousands of tourists every day come and they stand in front of this pink wall, and nobody shoots them in the face. Ladies, this is a news broadcast. I had a couple of great conversations here about Infinite Jest, which they think is a vape shop up the street. This is LA's version of the 9/11 memorial. Nobody here is afraid of ISIS because the people here think ISIS is a smoothie. Everybody here is hiding behind levels and layers of irony. No one's really taking photos in front of this pink wall. It's a satire on late-stage capitalism.
But so I'm in Malibu, I'm on the beach, and I see like, you know, like those influencers, they'll do those you know, the white tents, and they're sitting there with the perfect picnic table and the pillows and the charcuterie board.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one of those setups, and I was like, okay, that's strange. And it's like a grandmother and her son doing a photo shoot there. And I was like, that's strange. And then I'm at the beach all day, and I walk back, and it's a totally different crew using the same charcuterie board, pillows, table, etc. set up on the beach. And I'm realizing this woman, her business is she stakes out there. She's an Airbnb experience person, most likely, and just rotates people in and out of this Instagrammable setup. And now it makes so much sense, like, how these influencers are always doing that type of stuff.
So she probably wakes up in the morning, sets this whole setup so that it doesn't get damaged by the weather, and then has these people come and rent for however long of a time for their photo shoot. And then at the end of the day, she takes it all down. Mm-hmm. That's actually genius in a place like that.
Let's do
it. We've talked about the dolphin stuff and the renting out of boats or renting out of different places in Orange County, but I didn't know that with the grandma. I think that's fascinating.
It's a genius business model. If you think about it, I mean, you're charging people, what, a few $100s an hour for a shoot, and then on top of it, you aren't paying rent for anything. There's no boat, there's no house, there's no asset. Mm-hmm. The beach is free.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't want to go into tangent on that, but I just thought it was funny.
No, I honestly kind of want to figure out a way to do that. Maybe I'll do a set in like a desert area. Or if I go back to Arizona, like I'll just figure out something like deserty and cliche and then make it a trend, and then everyone will want to go.
I will take you to cactus.
Because that's what it is.
I will take you to see some cacti.
I've had some people in my classes actually ask, what is a cactus? Like, I've never seen a cactus. Some people think that they're a conspiracy.
But they're in, what?
I'm not kidding. I've had this in some of my classes. You know when you do the intros and you talk about like Arizona or whatever, which is where we're both from, it's been astonishing hearing how many people are like, what's a cactus? Like, do they actually exist? Like, apparently it's a conspiracy. But they have them
in California.
Okay, well, maybe they just haven't seen them. Maybe they haven't visited Palm Springs or whatever.
Okay, interesting.
That has happened. I'm not just pulling that out of my ass, I promise.
I mean, that's something that I don't think you could just like pull out of thin air. But anyways, okay, so we have Clubhouse. What's interesting to me about Clubhouse is I was listening in on, I think it was the talk with Joe Rogan, Tim. It was I think the Weinstein brothers were there, Lex Friedman. It was when Joe Rogan joined Clubhouse after he got off his episode with Tim. And I wasn't in the room, but I saw a recording on YouTube. And the founder of Clubhouse was on it, and he actually gave a really nice little pitch about it and was answering some questions. And his kind of plan on how to monetize the app was so interesting to me. Did you watch that film at all, or kind of?
I watched the recording. I wasn't able to get into the live session because they had some sort of blockage that there were too many people, which is crazy. I want them to make that bigger. Yeah. It's probably a data issue, which makes sense. But hopefully, as they grow, they'll expand that like capacity limit.
I mean, we're gonna need it clearly because we have 2 listeners right now.
Yeah, it's like anytime Joe Rogan could potentially join on, it's gonna hit that cap.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
he's just massive. But I listened to the recording, and from what they're saying about going away from actual traditional ads to more of the subscription tier based monetization strategy, which I I think is super genius that not only would make them a lot of money, but it would also allow us to not have to deal with ads or anything annoying like that. And it's also customizable based off of who you actually want to follow. So say Joe Rogan, for example, now that he's on Clubhouse, say he got into a routine of going on live every week or whatever. You know how many people would pay for that subscription? I would pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope that it's not $50 a month or whatever, but something reasonable that everyone could get, and it's customizable to the user. I think that if you're someone who is starting rooms and isn't just a listener, it would be really great for Clubhouse to give that customizability to like the actual people, you know, like you choose how much money you want to make your subscription tier.
I wonder if you could make more money on Clubhouse or Patreon, because it's kind of like what they're describing. If anyone's familiar with Patreon, it's a really similar business to Patreon, except Patreon obviously isn't live and Clubhouse is. And
Patreon isn't, I don't think I would describe Patreon as a social media.
It's not a social media. That's correct.
It's literally just a monetization or crowdfunding tool if you really wanted it to be.
But I would say their strategy to eventually monetize is similar to Patreon's current plan in terms of a subscription base. And
the business model is that they take a percentage of each of those subscriptions, whether it be like 5%, 10%, however amount of money that actual user is making off of their tiers in that setup, then like Patreon, i.e. potentially Clubhouse, can make their money from like taking a percentage of that.
So yeah, I have this vision of like, once I heard that, I was like, wow, like the future of this is endless. Like we could get into this state of just constant transactions between people, and everyone could just make money off of their own platforms, which is kind of what TikTok is. Like people are kind of making a living off of not really having a real skill or talent that is directly contributing to the economy. And what I mean by that, it's not like, okay, you work at a factory and you're building this with your hands and doing that, or you work at a real estate company that's building apartments. Like we're going to start growing these industries where people are getting paid and making money off of just them as they're the asset. They're the thing that they're selling. And it'd be so cool on Clubhouse if we're just in this constant realm of transactions where like you have your brand, I have my brand, and we're just constantly giving each other money back and forth. And that'd be really interesting to kind of see how that plays out. It gives
everyone the stance to be like a digital entrepreneur, depending on like what content or what sort of digital presence they have on that platform.
Yeah, and we're getting paid for ideas, which is so cool.
Like Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies that are obviously off blockchain are trending right now. I feel like it's decentralizing ways to make money. It's like allowing everyone to be a freelancer. And before it was the people who were freelancing and making money producing like design or like audiovisual or whatever through freelance work. It wasn't everyone, but now this sort of makes everyone that. It's like everyone can be an influencer. Everyone can make money from what they're providing to the digital space, and in a way sort of like their own blockchain.
Now, this is kind of off
So it's
topic.
like investing in that person's blockchain. And maybe that will happen eventually. Sorry, I just keep interrupting.
No, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Like the decentralization of not only currency, but also occupation, income source, etc. And I think that what you're touching on is something really interesting, because this is a little bit of tangent, but in the US, our healthcare is tied to our jobs. And that's always been a weird caveat compared to other countries where you get healthcare either on your own or through the government, right? And I think what's interesting is that all the regulation that comes down on freelancing, gig economy, what we're talking about right now, which I actually think freelancing, being able to monetize on things like Patreon, Clubhouse, Instagram, etc., are actually very empowering to people. But unfortunately, with the way that our political class is structured and the way that our government, healthcare, business relationship works in corporate America, it's not giving us the freedom to kind of move in that direction because of bills like AB 5, which actually hurt people in the gig economy, people who are freelancers. And I just learned last week that the Biden administration I don't know if it's them or just the Democratic Congress is pushing to adapt a version of AB5 for the entire country.
Nope.
So if they do that, will that limit freedom on, because obviously their intentions I think are good. They want to give people healthcare that are in the gig economy and in freelance jobs that don't
but I
get
feel
covered.
like the caveat to that is way bigger.
Yeah.
Suppressing entrepreneurship, i.e. suppressing innovation, is so suffocating, and I don't want that to happen across the whole country. Like, I'm not even going to be censored to say that. I already know. I don't even like the fundamental basic of AB5 bill that's been in California.
So what do you think the solution is? Do you think that we should fix the healthcare relationship between corporate America and how healthcare is structured? Or do you think and move to more a European model? Or do you think that we should keep that, but just have people be able to get healthcare independently? Because the problem is that if you are, I agree, I don't think it should be regulated, and I don't think everything should be unionized, but America's in this really tough situation where our system and structure is kind of not set up to give benefits to people who have a career off of Clubhouse, Patreon, etc.
I think my ideal scenario would be completely scrape down the traditional healthcare system that we have right now and sort of figure out a way to build that up while also building up the importance of freelancing and entrepreneurship, which is obviously such a huge thing that we need in America, it's what's made America. Like, this is just the land of, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can do that because every opportunity is made available to you and you can take it in whatever way you want. And so I think if we destroy that capability, it'll be so detrimental and so tragic. And I don't want that, because I think that I do have a little bit of that entrepreneurial nature, and I don't want other people to feel like they're being suppressed.
Yeah.
But there is a way to bridge the two, because obviously we do need to make sure that people are healthy and that people are taking care of themselves, and that it's not impossible to receive health care, insurance, and et cetera. So
I think that would be a good compromise, because I've always been confused on how to fix the healthcare system, and I've always been interested in kind of the European models, but also a little hesitant because I am naturally more libertarian in the sense that I don't like government getting involved. But if the opposite is government getting involved in entrepreneurship with things like AB5 and then taking it to a national level with this policy they're introducing, I would rather just have a nationalized healthcare system with the government, because at least then it's not messing up what you're saying, the entire structure of entrepreneurship, and especially like smaller businesses. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that small businesses have already taken such a hit from the pandemic, like the ones that are barely staying afloat right now. I don't want them to have that like second wave of like threat, And I think that AB5 countrywide, nationwide would be definitely a tough hurdle to overcome.
Yeah. Well,
can we take a cheers break?
Let's take a cheers. Cheers.
For anyone who doesn't know, I feel pretty intoxicated. I guess we kind of already recorded for a while before, so maybe that's why.
So for our new listeners on Clubhouse, we had some people come in and out. We have some new people I can see. We unfortunately had an issue at the beginning, so we're kind of restructuring the podcast because we recorded for 30 minutes and didn't have our podcaster working.
I know. Well, it's
Anyways, okay. So
let's talk about Tim Dillon.
Let's talk about Tim Dillon. Okay. So if anyone doesn't know, Tim Dillon is a comedian.
A G.
He is my boyfriend, actually.
He's so freaking cool. He's such a cool dude. He's smart. He's brilliant.
These bee stings are actually a badge of honor. If you're stung by a bee, it means you're going to be fertile. I love a jolly bee. Thank you. Hello. This is actually great. Who knows what it's about? Because they take all of the American best foods, like fried chicken and cups of ice, and mix them together to make something really colorful. Whether it's food or not will be determined later by doctors.
He's hilarious.
I want to clip that and send it to him.
So multifaceted, and he knows so much about such a range of topics. And I think that ideally, the people that I love to be around the most are the people that are generalized in that way that can like make a joke about anything because they have familiarity with a whole realm of topics. So he is the staple person for that. He's also so humble, so original, authentic, and I just think all of his traits that like scream to me the most are just so great.
He has a very interesting life. For anyone who doesn't know, he actually designed this mug, and one of his main things is saying, like, he'll say something like,
he designs too.
He designed, unfortunately,
I mean, that's a pretty basic design, but
yeah. So one of his things is he says yes or yes. So it'd be like, is Jeffrey Epstein a pedophile? Yes or yes. Like, clearly he is. Yes. So it's just, there's no in that question. Anyways, he is a comedian. He's kind of blown up through the help of Joe Rogan, both Joe Rogan exposing him on the podcast, but also through his experience at the Comedy Store. And his forte is these long form discussions that are kind of these rant podcasts that he does. And then he also, what Jordan touched on, he does these hilarious skits. He's done one of his famous ones when he dressed up as Meghan McCain. He's dressed up as one of the Capitol rioters, and we kind of discussed that on a previous episode if you want to check that out.
He wears wigs.
He's not afraid to do anything.
He gets his makeup done. He goes all out. And I love it because there are a lot of guys, and especially guy comedians, like say Joe Rogan, for example, if you ever did want to start doing skits, could you ever see him actually going to that length of getting a full-blown makeover and putting on a dress? Like I just couldn't, he wouldn't ever do that. But Tim knows and sees the gap of need for like comedians who are willing to go that extra mile, and he just
put on the dress
because he knows how necessary it is right now, and especially with the pandemic, there's been, I mean, we need comedy, we need lightheartedness, we need for these crazy, absurd, wild things that have been going on that we can't even wrap our heads around to be like presented to us in a more comedic, like lighthearted and entertaining way, because it's been draining, like navigating it while it's straightforward.
Yeah. And I mean, I was kind of saying this, but I didn't get to fully say it. But so Tim's talent is mainly the rants. So these podcast rants, he's able to take current event issues and make you feel more comfortable about what's going on in the world. And what Jordan kind of mentioned is he's very smart. He's had a very hard life. He was a recovered drug addict. He worked in selling bad mortgages right before the 2008 crisis. He grew up in Long Island, New York, and obviously there's always jokes around Long Island. You know, his mom's his mom's schizophrenic. So he had this very interesting life, and he's able, you know, to have, you know, he doesn't see everything through rosy colored glasses. And I think in Hollywood, a lot of times comedians do comedy from that lens, and it can be kind of tiring, especially in a time like this when we are in the mix of a pandemic, an economic crisis, and globalization, all these things that if you're just a touch involved in keeping up with the media and the news, you're going to be a little freaked out. At least that's how I feel. And especially I discovered him or got really into him was after the election. I was so invested in the election. I was so emotionally drained day in, day out, staying up to date with everything and just feeling kind of lost and confused. And then I learned about the Great Reset, and we did an episode on that. And Tim was aware of all these things, and he's very in tune with true corruption and what that means, and kind of just adapting this mindset of there's not really much you can do. Like both political sides are corrupt, globalization's corrupt, China's corrupt. Like there's all these things that I saw that I was scared of. He was able just to be like, you know what? Live your life, be free, take advantage of the freedoms that we have at this moment. And now that's the only mindset that I want to have. Like I want to be positive, and I'm going to be aware, but I want to have relief. And every week when he posts on Saturday, I get that relief from his episodes.
I feel the same way. I think that he does a really great job of explaining that on both sides we've got extremists, and on both sides we've got ideologies that definitely don't cater to the average Joe or the person who is in the middle ground. So I want to stay in that, and I think that he does a really great job of making people see that, okay, yeah, we went through this crazy year in 2020 where leading up to the election and then during the election, then after the election when it wasn't even over yet per se, that it was very draining, and it was very all inclusive of all industries and all people. We were all following it. And I think that people are really desperately wanting a break. And I know I do, because I'm done with it. And but I don't want to give up the strategy of wanting to fight, though.
No,
I think that
agree.
he also does do a really good job of enforcing, okay, we need to speak up when it needs to be spoken up about. Like whatever that may be, whether it be freedom of speech or like crazy cancel culture or just anything online. He's addressed a lot of those examples, and I back him 100%, because I think that although we can be on the sidelines and not obsess over the political drama that's going down at that given point in time, I think that we can definitely agree that staying true and speaking up when needed and fighting when needed is something that we need to do for like the greater good of everyone.
We do.
And for not going totally over the edge of the cliff, because we're teeter-tottering on that edge of the cliff, and I don't want it to all go so over the edge just because we were all too lazy and burnt out to like fight.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that he's not trying to make people burnt out, but I think it's like, you're right, choose your battles, get involved in the things that you want to get involved with, but also accept that there is this just systematic level of corruption that I don't think you can ever fully get away. And he made me realize, I think when you're young and you're living through it and you see corruption, you see divisiveness, you think it's all new, and then you hear from people that are older than you, and he's not that much older than us, but he's lived through the 9/11 stuff and the Boston Marathon, and just kind of giving a perspective of like, this is just the cycle of life, and it happens. And he'll go like on the James Altucher episode a year ago, he talked about the Boston Marathon shooting, and he kind of connects all these dots that are, people would say are conspiracy theory-esque, but like they are legitimate. And I find comfort in that, because it's like, okay, I'm not crazy. There's lots of dark stuff happening, even though we live in America and we think that we're used to all these freedoms, so we don't think that there's all these bad things happening, but there are. And like, it's okay. It's okay. Like that goes
back to the stabbing incident that we just talked about a little bit ago. A couple days ago, one of our friends from home got legitimately stabbed in the leg in LA.
Yeah.
By a homeless man. And I feel like a typical headline that you may see about someone getting attacked, or a story that you would hear about or read online, it doesn't hit you in the same way as if you like actually know who that person is. And if you can relate to them, like someone of our age, a young girl, it's like you can viscerally put yourself in their shoes. And I just think that that's so hefty and it makes you think about everything that's going on, especially crime-wise, in a totally different light.
Yeah, and just to give people some background, so this is a friend of ours. We're not going to give any names, but she goes to USC, and she was middle of the day going to a donut shop of all places. You would think that even in like where USC is, which is kind of sketchy neighbor.
Typical Sunday morning, just going to get a donut or coffee or whatever it may be.
Picture this, you're getting a donut. Next thing you know, there's a knife in your leg.
Next thing you know, you turn down and there's some man laying on the ground with his rat dog and stabs you in the leg.
And runs away.
With a knife or machete, whatever it may be, whatever the device was. And then you run, you start sprinting, and then they're chasing you.
Yeah.
So literally they're chasing
nightmare. Them. And then this guy who works at Grubhub, who is, I guess, picking up donuts for delivery service, pins him down and sprays him with like pepper spray or something.
What are the odds that the Postmates or Grubhub driver that was in the same location as you, that was trying to protect you, would have pepper spray on them?
You know what's sad? I was thinking about that.
What are the odds of that?
And it makes sense, because if you work at Uber, if you are a Grubhub person, you're gonna probably encounter a lot of sketchy situations.
Yeah,
or at least be prepared.
Well, they're constantly going into commercial businesses, and especially in that like USC, Skid Row area, I mean, I'm sure a lot of those are busy all the time.
Yeah.
So there's just more of a likelihood that you would run into like a crazy scenario.
Well, and what's crazy about this story is that, like, okay, obviously USC has always been in kind of a sketchy neighborhood, but Jordan and I, or at least our first 2 years of college, we spent a lot of time at USC and went up there a lot. And I mean, I felt comfortable, especially during the day, if we were in a group in some areas.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
I don't know.
I mean, this is before the pandemic, so I can't even imagine what it's like now. I felt comfortable, yes.
I felt more scared than in other parts of LA, for sure.
Yeah.
But I just think I would have, I don't know. I think that, like, I was always just hyper aware. But I think it's really scary, like, hearing a story like that. And I think it's really scary that, not scary, but I do think that LA is hitting this place where it is becoming more and more dead, especially just seeing after the pandemic. I think before the pandemic, it was a completely fun, thriving city. I think it had its problems. I think California had a lot of problems. I think California honestly is too big to be managed, and we'll get into that later. But I've seen the decrease, and I have always grown up my entire life going to places like Venice, Santa Monica, downtown LA. And I saw it when it was really bad as a kid. And over the last 10 years, it's gotten so much better. And I felt comfortable going there as an adult. And I remember the summer that we were living here together in California, I would go up to LA a lot, and I would go to bars in downtown LA with my friends, and I would go out to Venice, and I felt completely fine being there by myself, or at least with a group. And I just went to my favorite coffee shop during the day, and there was every street that you could enter on. This is a nice neighborhood in Venice, homeless tents for like streets and streets and streets. And not even homeless tents, but on one of the streets, there was 3 or 4 sketchy RVs with, you couldn't see into the windows, you couldn't see into the doors, and they clearly weren't just there temporarily because they had these like wheel blocks.
Yeah.
And I felt walking through that someone could pull me into the RV and do something horrible to me. And maybe that's just because I'm a girl, and I think girls are more aware of that type of stuff because we have to be. But I just think it's sad when that same day I got a parking ticket for parking too close to a fire hydrant that was hidden.
But then they're allowed to do that.
But then they're allowed to do that. And this poor business, I turned away, and I went home because I didn't feel comfortable going.
I would do the same thing as you, because if your safety is threatened and you're going to put that at stake just to get like a coffee or a muffin, it's like, what are the comparisons, you know? And
a muffin or getting stabbed. A donut or getting stabbed.
A muffin or getting stabbed by someone who tries to put a knife to your throat at the door of their RV because you might be passing by trying to get to your car.
Yeah, and I just think it's not to say like whenever, I mean, before like all the tents and the RV stuff, I've always been, I mean, I still am very sympathetic to homeless people, and I feel horrible in their situation. And I think the majority of them are harmless. I don't think that they're out for crime, but I think that when you have all the tents start to gather, and then you see more needles, and then like there was one situation where there was a really nice car in front of me, and a guy came up to the car and like stopped them. I think that's when it starts to get a little bit more concerning.
It's a whole community now, and it always was. Even in Anaheim, when they had that strip on the canal that was like a tent city sort of thing, they moved everybody out, and so they dispersed. But now in LA, it's not just the homeless people that have tents as their home base, but it's homeless people that are living in camper vans, whether they be RVs or like smaller vans, like ice cream truck size. They're just parking them there and being a part of that community. And I think that that's really interesting because that was not there before the pandemic. And I think that there are a lot of people moving from other states too, driving those vehicles over here to just sort of park and like be in California. And it's great weather.
I would love to have a tent, just full disclosure, I would love to have a tent on the beach in Malibu. Like, sign me up.
I actually could do that too.
Like, just for the
as long as I had like a little bonfire pit that I could make some food, have some heat.
Sign me up.
as long as there's no like animals, deers running on the beach, then I'd be good.
Deers on the beach.
Raccoons like over the hedge.
Yeah, no, but I think that we should talk maybe briefly about why Tim Dillon and some others decided to move from LA to other places. Because if we're assuming that LA is dead potentially, like there are people that have been saying that.
Rest in peace. Rip LA.
I've been really getting into Texas. We're thinking about maybe moving Los Angeles. We talked about this earlier today. We're thinking about getting out of California. And it's part of it is the economic collapse, the fires, the homelessness, the civil unrest, the racial tension, the policing, the lack of freedom, the dirt, the diseases that are coming back, the high cost of living, the high property tax burden, the high income tax burden, the mismanagement of the state, the political issues, the earthquakes, the tectonic issues. That's just to name a few negatives. The death of Hollywood, how embarrassing it is to even be in this business. The idea that everything is independent now and you don't have to be in Los Angeles to get any opportunities, and nobody's giving you any opportunities. You give them to yourself. And the opportunities you get can get taken right away. And we're thinking about moving. And I got to be honest with you, I mean, for no other reason. And me and Ben literally just we looked at America and we threw a fucking pin at the country. And we didn't even know where it was going to go. We're thinking about maybe Austin, Texas. And it's just, we threw a pin and it was dark. Room was dark and the map was dark. And we just threw a pin and I said, what is that? And it was Austin, Texas. And it's so, and again, I don't know if we'll know anyone there. I don't know if anyone we know lives there. Probably not. We'll probably be alone. We'll probably be the biggest podcast in Austin, Texas, if we move there.
So are you moving?
I'm out of here. Yeah.
When do you leave?
Soon. Yeah.
Texas or?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Texas.
I got a farm in Vermont.
Yeah.
It's a little cold.
Vermont's cold. I just want to go somewhere in the center of the country, somewhere it's easier to travel to both places, and somewhere where you have a little bit more freedom.
No, Tim Dillon, Joe Rogan, those are just the first of it. It's so many people. Yeah. TikTokers, actors, athletes, business moguls, Elon Musk, they are setting the tone for that it's okay to move out of LA. And it's honestly great to not just okay, that it's actually beneficial to move out of LA, because there are so many other cities that want to help foster businesses and want to help not have those restrictions, because LA has been on a very strict lockdown. And I understand it, especially for someone like Elon Musk, who has all of these companies and he's focusing on getting us to Mars. He wants to get us to Mars. He wants to do things. He wants to make things happen, build rockets, employ a massive staff. He wants people to be productive. And the restrictions that LA was enforcing, there's just no way that he could have done that. So I totally get it why he wanted to move. And I guess Austin now is the place.
I agree. And I think that, like, I've listened to both Tim and Dylan's kind of take on why they have left LA to move to Austin. And I definitely want to throw in some of the clips that kind of break it down more. But for me, like, oh shit, fuck. I was trying to cue the clip. Oh, gosh, I got on my laptop. Dude, break. Okay, commercial. Cue. All right, Vid. I'm getting my next glass. Should be enough. Guys, we've had a lot of L's this recording, but I'm not afraid to admit it because We usually never have L's.
we don't have L's, and I think the combination of alcohol definitely brings a higher likelihood of that happening into the picture. So that's where we're at right now. But we were talking about
demonetized from this for drinking on screen.
No. We could get demonetized from cussing, but if we're legal to be drinking, technically, yeah. It's not like we're chugging or whatever.
I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah, you're drinking coffee.
I'm drinking coffee.
And I'm drinking grape juice. Sparkling grape juice.
Yeah.
Actually, just kidding.
All right, fans. All right. Okay. So I do want to just wrap up the LA is dead stuff because I feel like I didn't get to fully. I feel like I discussed it more on the first take that we did, but I want to get those points across before we segue into the next thing. I think that one thing too that's driving it, which will be really interesting to see how it plays out, is the people that are left in LA, at least, it's just Hollywood. It's just the people that I don't really care if they're there or not anyways. I think Hollywood is kind of drained and washed out. I think that them buying into cancel culture and all of the social justice agenda has kind of stagnated their ability to like grow from an art perspective. I don't know if you agree. Like even just the rules that they now have in place for the Oscars, I think that puts you in a place where anytime you're limiting art, it's not going to end well. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to end well for Hollywood. I think that anyone who is creative and wants to be truthful, and ultimately art is truth, people like Tim Dillon are going to see that, and they're making the decisions to move out and go to places like Austin where Joe is going to be making the new Comedy Store there. And I think that it's going to make cities very branded to old versus new. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, I think it's like 50% of millennials are moving out of California, which is an insane number. If you think about historically, California was like what you're saying in the 60s and the 70s, surfer culture, young people moving out here to be part of Hollywood in the 60s, Woodstock, that whole concert Beatles movement, that, you know, now it's all old people and it's all, they're trying to survive. I
thought of earlier the fact that a lot of the most recent popular LA movies depicting Hollywood and like glamorizing Hollywood and LA, downtown LA, they've all been done in the manner of showcasing the 60s, 70s, 80s even. Yeah. And that was when LA and Hollywood were in their prime. And so, yeah, these movies are great. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, La La Land, those are amazing films and they've won so many awards and whatever. But none of these LA movies are showing LA as it is right now. Yeah. And I think that's a really good dichotomy that a lot of people can wrap their heads around because, yeah, everybody knows what LA looks like. Everyone knows what Hollywood is and who consists of Hollywood. Even like the Academy, which is the Oscars, it's literally just a club of actors and wealthy people who make film.
The Academy.
The Academy is just the actors that are on that production that are in the audience of the Oscars. Like that's what it is. So they're nominating and voting. They're voting on their own pieces of work, and it is art. Film is art, and I think that it's like they're the culprits of the restrictions and constraints that they now have. So they're the authors of their own artistic constraints, and I think that that's interesting, and it will be interesting to see where it continues to go. But I know that there's a lot of other groups of production companies and even more, say, politically like controversial, or not controversial, but political groups like to go against those like very stereotypical and traditional production companies that have been existent in LA and Hollywood. So it kind of like brings more flavors and interpretations of certain things into the mix, which I'm excited for because they might not have the same constraints. They might, but it's expanding outside of Hollywood is what I'm trying to get at. And I think that LA has sort of forced that because so many people have moved out.
No, and I think you're right. I think it's interesting because Hollywood, especially like when we're talking about the Oscars, it's like Meryl Streep and all these actors that have such a high net worth for so long. They make California seem like it's the standard with how they talk about politics and how they kind of give off this impression that they're so giving and et cetera. When in reality, if you look at California, it is 1/3 of Hispanics are below the poverty line. And then 1/5 of Black people are below the poverty line. Wow. So those are like some of the largest numbers for those different minority groups. 1/3 and 1/5.
1/3.
And you hear things like President Biden being like, "Oh, California needs to be the gold standard," and I'm like,
absolutely not.
Especially not recently.
Absolutely not. You've got homeless people stabbing people left and right. You've got traffic. You've got taxes out the ass. You've got 1/3 of an entire group of people below the poverty line.
And Silicon
How can
Valley,
you say that that's a gold standard?
And Hollywood have created this kind of weird, not weird, but like they've created this culture in LA where there can't be a middle class because it's either the elite or the people that serve the elite at the bottom level. There isn't room for middle class because you're right, taxes are high for income.
It's impossible to start a business here.
Exactly.
Even getting the right documentation and like legal action in the works is so hard.
And if you think about it, like I think that like all the established companies in Silicon Valley will probably stay there because they've already made a name for themselves there and they've already figured out all the tax breaks that they can do.
They're also in the same sort of tight-knit squad anyways. Yeah. Like they're all like bargaining for each other in a way.
And that's how Hollywood's going to be the same thing. But people who are smart, who are the innovators in both the media communication space, but also in the tech space, I think they're going to be moving different places. I think Austin's going to be huge for comedy. I think it's going to be huge for innovators, tech. The tech world there has been growing for the last 10 years, and it's going to continue to do that. And everyone from Silicon Valley who's smart and new and young is going to go there. Miami, like we talked about, is
Miami.
TikTokers, YouTubers. Logan Paul's talked about moving there.
Logan Paul is moving to Puerto Rico,
which is crazy.
Literally not even Miami, but there are a lot of TikTokers and influencers moving to Miami, which I think would be more just geared towards them
partying. Yeah,
I mean, if you're an influencer and you're famous and you make money off of doing stuff, and being able to take photos at restaurants and take photos at tourist sites, if you're not able to do that in certain states, like you would need to move to a different state that would allow you to do that so that you can make a living for yourself, and TikTokers, not totally sure why they're moving there, but I would assume that it's just because they want to party and they're young and they're famous and they have the entire world as their oyster. But I think it's very interesting. It's obviously not just Austin. It's Miami. It's Nashville. It's even
Phoenix, where we're from.
Even, Arizona, 100%. Dallas, too. I am all for it because I'm not someone that would say that a city has just a rise and then a climax and then an end. I think that it's a roller coaster, and I think that LA is now sort of declining on that roller coaster. Or it's on the decline for now. Not sure how many years that's going to occupy.
At some point,
it will come back.
I think New York will eventually maybe come back as well.
New York, Chicago, even Boston, LA. I do think that these cities will come back eventually, but they need the right leadership and they need the right people to help that happen.
Newsom isn't cutting it.
And right now, Newsom isn't cutting it, and also they've lost. LA and California in general has lost really key players that have made California what it is, especially Rogan in the comedy group, especially Elon with how many jobs his companies that he has built employ. Like that's really good infrastructure. So they're losing key players, and I don't think that that's something to take lightly because that's hard to get back, especially when people of that stature are moving completely to a different state. Like they're not just going to move back like that.
No, I think once you're settled, and they're building. They're it's not temporary. They're looking to build.
Yeah, long term.
Newsom, the wine merchant, the Barbie Ken doll, he's not cutting it for us anymore, and people are getting smart and they're leaving if they can. And I think it's interesting though, because I think especially, we have leaders like we talked about Tim, we talked about Joe, and now we talked about Clubhouse, and like, where do you kind of see the future of communication go as all these people are shifting, but also the platforms are shifting as well. We're moving towards a social media company that's based off of conversation with voice, which just seems so
voice
archaic.
audio.
Yeah, as opposed to social media, which is usually visual and text oriented. Starting to slur my words. Sorry, guys.
Too much alcohol. I think that
it's time to go to bed.
Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube, there's definitely been a text component that's been very important to influencers gaining more following and sort of appealing to their audience. I think that Clubhouse has done a phenomenal job at figuring out ways to make sure text is important and recognized, but having it not be the centered focus. I think that verbal authentic communication with audio is so, like, it's just as pure as it gets, because you can't edit this. It's live. It's real time. People who are listening to you, there's no way that you can go back and edit that, or that you can try to portray yourself as someone else
or cancel people.
It's genuinely just
too,
you. So if there are people who are only becoming influencers from this app and had no other following on other apps, I think that is so sick, because it's genuinely just from audiences listening to them and being like, yeah, I vibe with you. I love what you're saying. I love the audio intel that you're providing me. And I think that that's like real value.
Do you see Clubhouse as being complementary to podcasting, or a competition to podcasting?
As of right now, I see it as complementary, but if they ever implemented more functionality to emphasize like podcasting or like as a space for podcasters, then it would definitely be a competition.
Yeah.
Because right now there are clubs for podcasters or whatever, podcast enthusiasts, but it's still sort of grouping everybody together. Like every room I've been in, it's like such a hodgepodge of people of totally different backgrounds, totally different interests and skill sets. And it's sort of everybody coming together to talk about or listen to one subject or like a few subjects, but it's very down to earth and wholesome. And I think that it's good for us, who obviously we are on a podcast, that we can use it as an outlet to do like the live functionality, which is something that we've been wanting to do for so long, but it's not detracting from like other areas of Clubhouse. Like you can just hop around. You can do so many things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see where the communication stuff goes. I mean, we touched on it at the beginning of this episode, but I think it's going to decentralize everything. I think it's going to give people, anyone who wants to have a platform can hopefully have at least a shot at trying to figure it out. And I'm excited because I think on Clubhouse, or on a phone call, it's more efficient. You get to hear people's intentions. I love the aspect of bringing people up to speak and getting exposure that way, as opposed to like, oh, you have to comment on something or you have to DM. I feel like that seems a little more invasive.
It takes extra work to do that.
Yeah, and you can't read intention behind that. And what I also love about Clubhouse is that it takes away from bots being on there, because you have to have a real phone number, you have to be invited. So it isn't this like place where you have negativity as much from fake accounts, bots, from Russia.
It's actually absurd how prevalent bots are, especially on Twitter. I would 100% highlight Twitter, because everybody knows that on Instagram, girls who have like an irregular and confusing amount of followers, obviously that's a bot that they purchased to regulate and provide you with like fake account followers.
Can you still purchase followers on Instagram?
I think you definitely can purchase followers on Instagram, but like for large amounts of followers, I think that you sort of hire a bot or purchase whatever that bot functionality is, and then they just sort of filter and continuously filter more followers to your account. Interesting. Okay. But on Twitter, it's not just about followers and the numbers. It's about like there are bot accounts that their faculty and staff manage to legitimately post things that are like very important to a certain discussion that's being held on Twitter. And it's from a fake account.
Interesting.
Like it's not that actual person, but they built them out so intently and so like heftily. Like there's a lot of tweets on there. There's a lot of followers. It looks like everything is real, but it's actually a bot account that's like commenting on, say, a political tweet just to be able to highlight like what that counter argument would be. I don't know if I'm explaining that well.
No,
but
you're explaining it. It's funny. I had a friend that bought and he bought followers on Spotify because he thought that
wait,
people,
Spotify?
I know.
Who looks at followers on Spotify?
It was for a company thing.
Okay.
It's just, but it's kind of funny.
I definitely don't look at people's followers on Spotify.
Anyways, I don't know. I feel like we talked about everything, right? We covered everything we wanted to talk about. Is there anything else?
I don't know. I haven't been on much of a structure. I feel like we were kind of in and out of some L's earlier. So this was definitely a more chill recording. And I love talking about LA. I love talking about Tim Dillon. I'm a huge fan. Tim, if you're watching.
Tim.
I applaud you in so many ways.
Please let me be your girlfriend. I know you're gay, but I love you.
I know you're gay, but I'll date you. I just want to like go watch a movie with him or just sit and have some dinner. Like, he doesn't drink, so we obviously couldn't drink, but like we could just chill and hang out. That'd be great.
I think it's amazing like how funny he is without the alcohol. I don't know.
He's just a very spontaneous person, and he's able to pick up. I believe that there's such thing as comedic intelligence where you're able to recognize any window for like throwing in a joke and just execute it. Like go for it. He shoots every shot, and a majority of the time, since he's so good at shooting a shot, they work out and they pan out as comedy. But for some people that do try to do that, it doesn't always pan out. So that's what the differentiation is between someone who's really good at comedy, whether it be stand-up or just on the spot interview style, like making everything lighthearted and entertaining. He is an absolute pro, and I will probably never do stand-up, but I am a total stand-up fan. Like I love that. Specials, even if that's what I can get, I'll watch them. But I think it's like an art form that I know there's a lot of brilliance and intelligence that's behind it, and that I hope doesn't go away, because comedy, especially in times like this, is very crucial.
It's critical. We talked about that, but it keeps you sane. And ultimately people like Tim, listening to his podcast, even just hearing his interview with James Altucher a year ago was so helpful. Just them predicting a lot of what's happening in terms of like the shift of, having to get online, having to be smart. If you don't speak from a place of truth and being authentic, you're not going to hit people hard enough. You're not going to gain a following, and just not being afraid to do things in an alternative manner. So I think that with all, to wrap this up, with all the new things that are coming to light, especially with Clubhouse and being in this transitional period with, a new, post-election, and in the U.S., like you said, we're on this teeter-totter, and I think that we have the power, especially as young people, to move it in a positive direction and take advantage of the opportunities that are at our fingertips that we can.
Everybody has a voice, and the collective conglomeration of people speaking their voice against bigger powers, that definitely has a weight to it. So I think it's
using your voice.
I love talking about these trends that are going on. I love talking about where things could potentially go and making predictions. I just encourage everyone to like stay up on it, really pay attention to sort of like the state exoduses, where people are moving to, where these industries are moving to, big businesses, big entrepreneurs, and make your decisions like based off of that in a way, because there's like huge changes happening, and I love being able to like be a spectator to it, and I know how important it is.
Yeah, like we talked about, I mean, we've talked about this, I think, almost in every episode, but definitely we highlighted in Take Charge of the New World. I think that everything we said in that episode still holds true, and we are in a different world post-COVID, and you've got to make decisions with that knowledge. And I want to empower people to do that. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for bearing with us with all this craziness, especially to the people that were in and out of the Clubhouse tonight.
Yep.
Definitely you guys were superstars.
For next time, we'll be better.
We'll be better.
We can only be better. That's the challenge.
I think we'll get some funny clips out of this. Like, I'm excited to see what happens. All right. We'll catch you guys later.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank you for listening.